What's up everyone, it's King Mushi with JCross X, welcoming you all back for episode 39 of Class Overview. For those who aren't familiar, the Class Overview series is a collection of informative videos where we'll be discussing the different classes in Fire Emblem 3 houses.
We'll be going over general information about each class, like their certification requirements, stats, abilities, and their overall strengths and limitations to determine their viability and what units are a good fit for each class. As per usual, these videos will be gameplay focused, so there shouldn't really be any major spoilers, but I advise you anyways to watch your own discretion, and if you haven't played 3 houses yet, you absolutely should.
This episode will be focused on the Valkyrie class. It has 6 moves while mounted and follows the cavalry movement archetype, meaning it takes a harsher movement penalty on every type of tile aside from the standard regular tiles, particularly on stairs. Valkyrie has 3 class abilities. The first 2 are Black Magic range +1 and Dark Magic range +1, which increase your maximum attacking range with Black Magic or Dark Magic spells respectively by 1 tile. With only one exception, units in this class are only going to get value from one of these abilities, since pretty much every unit either only gets Black Magic or only Dark Magic in their reason spell list. This means the class effectively only has 2 abilities in pretty much all cases. The third ability, as you can expect from a mounted class, is Canto, which allows you to use your leftover movement after performing an action. Overall, this is an excellent set of abilities even if you don't get value from all 3 of them. In order to certify for Valkyrie, you will need at least a B rank in Reason and a B rank in Riding, though as always you can gamble the certification a bit below those requirements. You will need an Abyssian exam pass like the other special classes, and once again like Darkflyer in the previous episode, it's important to note that only female units are able to certify into this class. The certification can be a little demanding since there isn't much precedent for this to train both Reason and Riding, but if you plan ahead of time and take advantage of group tasks then it's definitely manageable. As for skill level bonuses, Valkyrie provides a +3 to both Reason and Riding and a +1 to Faith. The Faith bonus is a bit low, but it's still nice to unlock the rest of your Faith spell list quicker and potentially to meet the A rank Faith requirement for Grimoire as a promotion option. The Reason bonus is great for unlocking the rest of your Reason spell list, as well as picking up useful abilities like Reason level 5 and Black or Dark Magic range +1, which stacks with the class abilities. The Riding boost can help you pick up movement +1 at the A+ rank a bit earlier, and together with the Reason boost, these can be nice for meeting the B+ Reason and A Riding requirements of Dark Knight, which is another very logical promotion option for Valkyrie at level 30.
Just like Darkflyer, Valkyrie's stats aren't the most impressive by any means. The bases aren't nearly as bad as Darkflyer's, but they aren't great. None of the stats particularly stand out aside from maybe res, and if your unit has poor res you may be granted a point upon certification since the base is 13. Other than that, they are in bad position as slightly better than most intermediate bases, but worse than pretty much all of the advanced bases. This is a similar situation to that of Darkflyer where you probably want to certify into Warlock first if you can, since it's not too incredibly far off the Reason requirement for this class, especially if you gamble at B+. Moving on to boosts, we have an interesting spread that provides a lot of smaller boosts, but not very impactful ones. The class gives a +5% growth modifier to Luck, Defense, HP, and most importantly, Magic, as well as a +10% modifier to both Res and Charm. These boosts remind me of Paladin spreads, which were extremely varied. However, focus on Res instead of Magic is somewhat unfortunate given that a 5% boost is not very impactful throughout the time you'll most likely be spending in this class. Additionally, the class also does have a -5% growth penalty in speed, but again, for some spellcasters that barely matters, and for those who it does affect, still not very impactful given the small value. As for boosts, the class grants a whopping +4 to Magic, which in our opinion saves the class statistically, as that is a very impactful boost, tied with Dark Bishop as the highest Magic boost in the advanced stage. +4 not only gives a big bump to damage, but notably gives an extra tile of warp and rescue range. The class also grants a +1 to HP and a +2 to Charm, as well as a -2 to speed and a +2 to res while mounted. Those specific boosts change to a +0 to speed and a +1 to res when dismounted, which can definitely be worth it in scenarios where not having the speed penalty might make the difference. Overall, the stats of Valkyrie aren't anything too impressive, but it's definitely better than Darkflyer's and it at least has one very impactful boost to improve the class's overall performance.
Upon mastering Valkyrie, you will gain access to the equipable ability Uncanny Blow. Similar to the other blow skills, this ability only works during the player phase, after the unit that has it equipped initiates combat. The effect it provides is a very substantial +30 boost to hit. This is an incredibly useful ability and among the absolute best masteries during the advanced stage. Boosting accuracy is always very important, especially on Maddening, and in the context of a magic class, this can be extremely useful for spells with lower accuracy like Dark Magic and Ice Magic, as well as magic weapons that really struggle for accuracy like the Bolt Axe. It affects any weapon type, and very importantly this also includes gambits. This ability just makes your turns way more reliable, and reduces your risk of having to burn a Divine Pulse because of an unlucky miss. The most comparable ability to Uncanny Blow is Hit plus 20, which is the standard accuracy boosting skill that most units pick up in the intermediate stage. Compared to Hit plus 20, Uncanny Blow has the obvious advantage of providing a larger boost to hit at +30 instead of +20. However, the downside is, unlike Hit plus 20, it doesn't work during the enemy phase. This isn't a super big deal since most magic units aren't well suited for enemy phasing anyways, but it's still worth mentioning and it makes it a bit less flexible. Regardless, the big advantage this has for magic users over Hit plus 20 is that you don't have to spend time in a class that disables spell casting, that being Archer, to pick it up. For some units who really rely on their spell list, this can be a big deal. That being said, Uncanny Blow becomes available a good amount of chapters after hit plus 20 since it's at the advanced stage rather than intermediate, and accuracy is arguably a bigger struggle in the early game. Still, though it's not quite as good of ability as hit plus 20 overall, it's still very good, and the two of them don't necessarily have to compete with each other. If you have the slots, you can even run both them together. This is often overkill, but it can be useful for certain builds, and magic users often don't have as many abilities competing for their slots. Overall, this class is definitely worth mastering, and you can't really go wrong with using this ability.
Valkyrie is quite a strong magic class, evident with the amount of strengths it has. First, the movement is quite solid for a magic class, given that it has 6 and access to Kanto. This makes it nice for hit and run strategies, as well as potentially being a good user of rescue similarly to Darkflyer. The innate +1 range to both dark and black magic is also nice too, as it makes Valkyrie uncontestable in a lot of situations, even more so with staves such as Thyrsus and the Caduceus staff. This can be supplemented even more with dark and black magic range +1 from S Reason, as well as certain spells with extra tiles of range such as Death and Thoron. All these factors together means you get pretty ridiculous range on your spells in this class, for both dark and black magic users, which is appreciated since Darkflyer was tailored more towards black magic. Statistically, as I mentioned earlier, the +4 to magic is really strong, and is the highest boost in the advanced stage for female units, since Dark Bishop is inaccessible to them given the gender restriction. As I mentioned, this boost supplements their damage nicely while providing an extra tile of range to support spells like Warp and Rescue. On a mounted class that has decent move, this is actually pretty nice and will probably be taken advantage of more easily given that factor. Uncanny Blow is also a great mastery, and any female unit who is able to raise their reason and riding to this point should definitely consider picking this up, especially if they are primarily a player phaser, since Uncanny Blow provides an extra 10 hit over hit +20. There isn't much to say about the mastery, as although it's less accessible and versatile than hit +20 given that fact that it's always active, Uncanny Blow can still be very useful for a lot of female spellcasters. Lastly, being grounded works much more in its favor than you think, since unlike Darkflyer, it actually has access to a lot more options for battalions and access to guard adjutants.
Valkyrie is quite good overall, but it does have a few weaknesses. Its movement is certainly above average for a magic class, but 6 move is already a bit low for a cavalry class while still having to deal with all the same cavalry terrain issues. A lot of maps in this game, particularly in the late game, have really difficult terrain for cavalry classes. It does have its own advantages over Darkflyer and other aspects, but Darkflyer's 7 move with Flight is pretty much subjectively better. While Valkyrie's range boosters are really nice, it does lack a Tome Fair skill, which is unfortunate for its damage output. It's not a very big difference at all compared to Darkflyer, since Valkyrie comes with a +4 magic stat boost, but compared to Warlock it does do a bit less damage. That leads it to another point, which is that at the Master stage, it is mostly outclassed by Dark Knight. Valkyrie is not completely without its advantages compared to Dark Knight, it has better range and grants a bit more magic, but the extra move and Tome Fair of Dark Knight are almost always going to be worth the upgrade. This isn't a problem if you use Valkyrie as a transitional class, which is great for, but it does limit its endgame potential a bit. This becomes especially apparent when considering Valkyrie's subpar growth rates, which depending on her unit's base growth rates, can make it pretty sketchy to stay in this class in the long term. The magic growth is better than Darkflyer, but not really any other magic class, and the speed penalties, both the growth modifier and stat boost, are not great to deal with either. You will most likely want to move on to a class with better stats by the time the Master stage arrives, or maybe even as soon as you're done mastering the class. Honestly, most of these weaknesses we've listed for Valkyrie are a stretch. None of them are that severe. Valkyrie is very much a jack of all trades. Its combat isn't the best at this stage, but it's perfectly good enough, and the same applies for its utility. There are other classes you can pick that are better at each individual attribute, but Valkyrie offers a nice mix of everything you would typically want in a spellcasting class.
Overall, I would give Valkyrie an 8.5 out of 10. We feel comfortable giving this high rating due to the fact it doesn't have too many outstanding weaknesses and provides most female spellcasters a very comfortable and versatile class in the advanced stage. I'd argue pretty much any female magic unit who can go this class probably should, assuming that you have multiple Abyssinian exam passes to spare. This is mainly due to the Master being as good as it is, but if your unit eventually wants to end in Dark Knight, this is definitely the class to spend your time on, given that it'll make certifying for that class extremely trivial. This class isn't perfect for the endgame, because although it has a strong niche, the growths aren't great, and said niche isn't as crazy as Darkflyers, so we do think this is the most logical path for most Valkyries to go, but that doesn't stop it from being a great class. This brings us to the unit recommendations, and for a standout, we'd probably have to give that to the canon user of this class, Happy. She has both boons in Riding and Reason, as well as the spell Death to stack with this class's innate dark magic range +1. Her magic growth is quite high, and the rest of her spell is strong too, so she can stay in this class for quite a while despite the poor boost to magic growth. Additionally, the +4 to magic this class grants also supplements her warp with an extra tile of range, which is much appreciated. As for other strong Valkyries, Marianne is also a good contender given that she has a riding boon and access to Thoron, which similarly to Death pairs very nicely with the extra tile of range that this class provides. The movement of this class also complements Frozen Lance well, a strong combat art that she has at her disposal. While Isidia doesn't get access to a spell that provides extra range, Thyrsus paired with her already extremely capable magic output means that she can be an absolute menace in this class, even without a Tome Fair supplementing her damage. Those are definitely some of our best recommendations, but other female spellcasters such as Mercedes, Constance, and Annette, who don't get anything particularly specific for this class, can still perform in it well enough, and all of them definitely would appreciate Uncanny Blow. For Dorothea, it's arguably worth it to push past her Riding Bane in order to certify into this class too. Along with having a pretty solid spell list herself, similar to Marianne, she has access to Thorn, which provides her a decent synergy for this class. As for a somewhat uncanny but actually decent option, Edelgard has both access to Dark and Black magic, which this class both supplements. So to anyone who wants to take advantage of Edelgard's magic capabilities, this is unironically one of the better classes for that purpose, funnily enough. Overall, the only female spellcaster I want to recommend is probably Manuela. Not only does she not get anything too specific for this class, she has a Reason Bane which can make certification annoying. Additionally, she's one of the faster casters in this game, so if you value that aspect of her, throwing her in a class with less than ideal speed is most likely not a good idea. Similar to Darkflyer though, this class is very versatile and provides a lot of potential to those who certify into it. Although the class is better move and a stronger niche, Valkyrie has the better mastery, its own unique niche, and the better stats to help you close the gap between those two classes. Additionally, while we think you should really only have one, maybe two Darkflyers given the battalion restriction, Valkyrie doesn't have that same issue, and as such you can span them to your heart's content if you desire, assuming you have enough Abyssian passes.
Given that rating, we're going to put Valkyrie at the lower end of A tier. It's a very comfortably good class that most people who have the DLC will utilize at least once in every playthrough. It's not really a bad idea for any mage to take the time to master this class, since it's versatile enough that any unit can benefit from its abilities, unlike some of the more specialized classes. And it does have a niche of its own due to its range boosters that can really shine in certain cases. The poll on my channel about which advanced stage magic class is the best had Valkyrie in second place behind Darkflyer, amassing 22% of the votes. I think this is a very impressive result considering the competition it's up against, and absolutely justifies its position in this tier. Even if we think it's a little bit worse than Darkflyer overall, they have very different niches, so they don't really compete with each other as much as you might think. I'm a big fan of this class personally, and I think it's really cool that it allows for a more logical promotion path than a Dark Knight, which prior to the DLC, the requirements for that class felt like they came completely out of nowhere. It can't really be understated how much of a benefit Valkyrie and Darkflyer provided the female magic units, though it would have been nicer if the male magic units to get some attention too. That's basically all I have to say about the Valkyrie class. If you liked the video or have any thoughts of your own, please leave a like and make sure to comment.
I also recommend checking the description if you're not already subscribed to both of our channels.
Valkyrie is the final special class, so it's time for us to move on to the last group of classes. Stay tuned for episode 40 on JCross's channel, where we'll be moving on to the first master class, Falcon Knight.